Big 550 KTRS. Yesterday, Jason Lamar told us about this Marine that was going to play for Middle Tennessee State, and he was not allowed. He was not given eligibility by the NCAA because he had played in some type of military league while he was in the active duty Marines. It caused quite a bit of national attention, so much so that John McCain was tweeting about it. Well, lo and behold, there's a local connection. Professor Tasso with St. Louis University. Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on the Big 550 KTRS.
Thank you, McGraw.
You wrote 5 years ago about all this. Tell us how you got involved in all this.
So, yeah, it was a big part of research that I had started when I was at Indiana University, and a dissertation that I wrote in 2005 contained one part of that policy that really now has become a little bit of national news from what I hear.
And what is the policy that the NCAA was talking about?
So back in 2009, actually, which was about 4 years later after we started writing about it and researching about this stuff, it was really essentially one part dealing with international student athletes. It dealt with amateurism, participation in professional teams. So the policy that changed in 2009 entailed allowing younger players that had participation in professional teams to come into the NCAA with full eligibility without having to face any consequences, even if they had played on professional teams. But the other part is the one that you hear about more nowadays, was the delayed enrollment portion. And what that meant was that if you are more than 1 year removed from the graduation of your high school class and you have participation in organized competition, then you will actually face sanctions and lose eligibility from the NCAA, depending on how much you played. Even though the participation, from what I hear, it was essentially a glorified scrimmage. And from what I hear, they actually looked at the situation, looked at all the facts, and I think from what we have the facts on as we get them, it essentially was a situation where it didn't really create a competitive advantage. It wasn't something that would should have a detrimental impact on the student athlete and the institution, so that's where they reinstated him.
So presumably this could affect a lot of players, a lot of people who've played in similar leagues. Do you think that this sets some sort of precedent?
And that is a good point, Casey. I think that's where some of the folks around the NCAA circles will say, well, are we creating a slippery slope? But this is where, one has to look at the common sense issues. You have to look at, whether there is a competitive advantage. You're not talking about somebody who played for 5-6 years after the graduation in competitive leagues, professional leagues, and so on. You're talking about something that makes common sense, so I think they made the right decision.
How did you get involved in the minutia of NCAA eligibility rules? And did you grow up always wanting to do that?
That's a good point. Well, now you're taking me back a little bit. So while I was practicing law and coaching basketball back home in Greece, I was exposed to a lot of these international recruiting attempts. A lot of the particular Division I coaches from the NCAA were involved in, and I started becoming pretty infatuated with this entire world of college sport that we had no idea about. So that became essentially doctoral studies and dissertation and research, and here we go.
So this case, somebody on the outside just watching this, it's a Marine, he fought for the country, and now he comes back. He played in, basically a football on the sidelines in between battles. And how does the NCAA say no to that guy? But the person who's not a Marine, the person who doesn't have John McCain tweeting him, how does that guy stand a chance to get the NCAA attention?
And that is a good question. And I think here is where one has to look at the different facts. If you're talking about the NCAA usually will have certain committees and a whole review of the entire case, the facts in terms of whether they have competitive advantage. The whole notion that the operative term back in the day when the policies were introduced were not to encourage failed professionals to come into the NCAA. So when you're talking about competitive participation, organized competition, for years after high school. That's kind of what they wanted to avoid, and that's
What about Johnny Manziel, the quarterback for Texas A&M, who's now in trouble? I don't know how much you've been following this or how much you're involved with this, but he's not being paid by a booster. He's not being paid by any. He's being paid by a third party in a capitalistic society to sign his name on a helmet, and that's against NCAA rules.
Well, actually, you're actually pointing at another part of research that I and some co-authors have been involved in terms of likenesses, the use of student athletes' images in video games and so on. That has been in litigation, and since some of our research has been part of that, I don't know how much we can say on the air, but there is
actually you can say everything.
I thought you would be prodding and needling on to that end, but I think what the situation is right now is that there are quite a few proponents of either changing certain interpretations of amateurism bylaws, again, making some more common sense practices in NCAA settings. I think we are before some changes that either will come through internal means, through the membership changing the bylaws, or through external means, through litigation and settlements.
So should we pay college athletes? I mean, that's their job.
We pay the coaches a lot of money, and we fire them when they don't win.
That's right. But the NCAA will say this is all about amateur sport. It's about the avocation. It's about higher education. And the student athletes have the chance to actually play professionally if they don't want to go to school.
Pay them $15 an hour. I mean, pay them something very minimal so it's not, but they can't work outside of being an athlete and be a student. There's some merit there, I think.
Indeed, there is, and that's where there is, again, that is a balancing act, and that's where quite a few policies and some commotion exists right now. Over the past couple of years, they've been talking about a $2,000 stipend, maybe increasing that, and that also has raised a lot of red flags around the membership. Are we diluting this whole bedrock principle of amateurism? That might change, but still, since it's so sensitive and still in litigation, I think we don't know right now what will happen.
The Olympics took off their amateur status, and it didn't seem to hurt the Olympic flames and the Olympic ideals, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And you're speaking to a Greek, so I will have to say, even back then in the ancient Greek Olympics, they weren't that amateur anyway.
Last question for you, Professor Tasso. You've taken on the NCAA with eligibility requirements. You've talked about Johnny Manziel. You want to broach the Father Biondi issue at St. Louis University?
No.
All right, fair enough. Now, you are Professor Tasso. What's your real name?
Anastasios Kabourakis.
That's exactly right. God bless you. St. Louis University management professor. You've been there how long?
4 years.
4 years. What do you think of fair St. Louis? What do you think of our fair city?
Outstanding. Great place to raise a family, as everyone says, and St. Louis University rocks.
Been to Ted Drew's?
Absolutely. And next time I will order them a grow.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
he knows how to suck up professionally. St. Louis University Professor Tasso, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
That's Casey Joyce. I'm McGraw Millhaven, 7:30 here on the Big 550.